Good evening and welcome to Plain Talk. This is your host, Christopher Ram, and thank you for being with us. For the next hour, we'll be talking about petroleum, its prospects, and some of its challenges. As my guest this evening, I have Mr. Chris Chapwanya, who has a blog, Oil Now. It's a free service.
Completely at this point in time.
If there is such a thing as a free service. So you heard the threat at this point in time. But Chris has been trying to propagate as much information as he can get. I did try to get a couple other persons this evening to join us on Plain Talk. Unfortunately, we're a country where people seem very afraid or reluctant to speak. So what I've decided, and I've agreed this with Chris, is that he's free to ask me questions as well, so that we can have more of an exchange rather than an interview. But so, Chris, I want to welcome you to on Plain Talk. I think this is about you've been here with your parking meters,
exactly,
yes,
under different circumstances, which from how things look, that might have to be renewed.
Renewed again. Well, let me start by asking you. This trip, this whole government team, 5 ministers and couple technical officers going all the way to Texas at the Texas campus of ExxonMobil. What's your take on that?
Well, you see, here the problem I have with the trip. The way in which the government seems to go about doing things lends to suspicion on the part of the population. After this trip would have concluded, we heard from the Ministry of Natural Resources and then subsequently the Finance Minister in his press conference that is getting a lot of press, that they went there as part of a team to be further briefed on the operations of the sector. And based on the information that
Does that
he
make
provided,
sense to you?
Well, look, oil is new to Guyana, right? Oil and gas. This is an entire new industry. And one of the key stakeholders that would be in charge, for want of a different terminology, of the resources and the revenue coming from oil and gas eventually is the government today. So one would like to think and one would expect that the government, any government, would become familiar with what transpires and what goes on in the sector. So if in that course of becoming familiar and getting an understanding of what this is all about, it entails going to the US, where ExxonMobil's headquarters is in Houston, Texas. I don't necessarily see that as
but
strange.
Is it not strange because it's Guyana, or is it a done thing? But listen, shouldn't they have announced it? Shouldn't they have given far more
Precisely.
information
Look, there is
in
no-
advance? Not
I agree with you completely. They should have said something prior to the trip, and particularly so based on the environment in which we live. I'm quite sure that the Natural Resources Ministry and the government as a whole know, and they would be reading the reports in the media, that there is some degree of apprehension. So if you're going to jump on an aircraft...
apprehension or suspicion?
Well, suspicion, apprehension, and outright, people are pointing fingers in some cases. But if you're going to go to Texas on a trip that is supposed to be above board, and from what I've seen in the press, it seems to have been above board, there is no harm in making an announcement prior. And it is that reluctance to be transparent, and sometimes for no apparent reason, is the reason itself that the government sometimes find itself into a situation in which they now have to defend.
Yeah, but the point is they never announced it. They took this massive team, the Minister of Business,
The quintet plus one, according to Minister Jordan.
The quintet, so we've
Yes.
gone into Latin now, is it?
Yeah, it's a team of ministers, and the advisor to the president is part of that team that is supposed to be looking into petroleum matters.
But, okay, so they went there. Then you hear when a question is raised in Guyana, then there's a press conference, you hear all the revelations. And it sounds like if they went to learn propaganda. Quite frankly, when I hear them talk, surely you could pick up a comic book for younger people, you probably don't know what comic books are, but very light reading. You could pick up a comic book and read some of the things that they came
Why
up
do you
with.
think they went to herd propaganda?
Because some of the things I heard. Look, ExxonMobil, you know, our oil exploration takes place at different levels. You have the hinterland, that's the Takatu. You have the coastal, then you have the
Offshore.
then you have, thank you, you have the deep, then you have the ultra deep. To say that ExxonMobil is in this fantastic place where they haven't gone before, that's absolute nonsense. That is propaganda.
Well,
Because
I did hear
they
that
are-
remark.
They are not in ultra deep, partner.
I heard that remark, but
now, Chris, tell me something. Why would anyone want to say that if it's not propaganda?
let me give you an honest answer. I don't think sometimes that the information that you hear is necessarily being said for sinister reasons all the time. Sometimes it's a case of genuinely not really knowing and understanding. And this is a new sector.
So they go to Texas, listen to all of this, and come back and don't know and understand. That's what you're saying.
Well, look here.
You accept this. You accept that ExxonMobil, the Stabroek block, is certainly not in ultra deep.
From what I've read so far, I found that comment a bit curious, and
You're a diplomat.
I've meant to find
It's
out.
not curious. It's not true.
Look, let me tell you this. There's a lot of information out there, and that is why I'm usually cautious in making pronouncements. There's a lot of information out there, but more importantly, and most importantly, there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially as it relates to this emerging oil and gas sector from all sides. And sometimes we need people to sit down and to try, at least, in the best interest of everyone, to convey what is supposed to be at least fact.
Doesn't that well? So you understand why I said propaganda?
Yes, I
Because it's not
understand.
true. It's simply not true. People go, you go there, you enjoy yourself, fet well, and hear nonsense, and you come back and repeat it.
So you're of the view that this trip was completely useless.
I think so. What could they have learned?
Let me ask you a question.
Feel free.
Due to the fact that oil and gas is new to this country, and none of us are really, experts in this field, what are some of the mechanisms you think that needs to be put in place to bring, first of all, the policymakers up to scratch, and then the citizenry?
I'm doing some studies in oil and gas. And I was doing some work on a paper. If you look at the National Development Strategy, the last version, it has 2 paragraphs on petroleum. If you look at the APNU plus AFC manifesto for the 2050 elections, it has 4 lines on petroleum. If you look at the budget speeches, if you look at the president's pronouncements, absolutely nothing. We have no policy. The first thing these people should have done is decided, look, we are now confronted with real petroleum reality, real existence. We have no policy. You have a 1986 legislation.
That's the Petroleum Act?
The Petroleum Act. And the minister said he's not thinking of changing it for now. Now, how could you, when you have a government where almost every month now somebody gets demoted, so
as
that
we see in
as we saw in today's
most recent
papers,
reports.
and to think that Mr. Moses Nagamutu, who has such a light portfolio, needs further assistance, really makes you wonder.
What makes you wonder? Just out of curiosity.
She is public affairs, and
Well, coming here, someone asked me that questions, but there's a side.
all right, let's
Yeah,
see.
but
So
interesting point.
we have no policy on petroleum. We have no legislation other than the 1986 legislation, which is completely out of date. Completely out of date. We have a Model Petroleum Act, a model petroleum agreement,
Mm-hmm.
which, when you go to the GGMC, which is the body, which is the regulator for petroleum, they give you that model agreement and said, look, take it away, see where you
It's
want to
archaic, it's outdated, it's useless.
You have a legislation, the petroleum legislation. One of the first things you have to do, you have to appoint a chief inspector. And your chief inspector is your principal regulator. 2 years after this government has come into power, and we know we got commercially viable petroleum resources, hydrocarbon resources, because, well, petroleum includes gas.
Mm-hmm.
We have not bothered to fix policy. We've not bothered to fix legislation. We've not bothered to fix regulation. We've not bothered to fix administration. What are we? Are we a country of idiots?
We're a country in which parties on all sides lack vision. That is the plain fact.
That is less than vision, man.
No, this is a problem. Let me explain to you. You mentioned the Petroleum Act. I have my copy here.
Oh, well done.
This goes back decades.
Uh-huh.
And we know, or we knew many years ago, that we thought that we had oil, right?
Yes.
So when you go through this
Oh,
document,
no. This is the Petroleum Commission bill.
The Petroleum-
This is different.
the
This
act-
is That's not the act.
no, but I have the act. I don't
Uh.
have it with me, but
Uh.
what I'm gonna say now, you know, because I got the act after a conversation that I had with you, and a certain paragraph from that act was being used on a program that
Yes.
you hosted recently.
Yes.
And in the act, it speaks about the petroleum industry here in Guyana.
Mhm.
And this, as you just said, goes back to 1986, 1983,
86.
86. My question is this. Successive governments in this country would not have seen it fit to begin setting up the infrastructure that is needed for the coming petroleum sector. And let me explain what I mean. The institutions of learning, for example, there is no mechanism in place, and maybe they're now trying to put mechanism in place to speak to petroleum education.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to equip persons with this knowledge only if there is a oil find. We
Right.
are surrounded, as we've always known, by oil producing countries, Trinidad, Venezuela, Brazil, Suriname. Why aren't we a forward thinking people in which we can sit down and look ahead and decide that this is where we want to go and begin to put things in place?
Okay, but we didn't have that. We didn't have that. The PPP fell down badly in that. The 1986 legislation was a PNC legislation.
Right, that was under the...
Haslin Paris
Mhm.
was the person who tabled that legislation in the National Assembly. And I think, Chris, my problem with all these people, and every afternoon you hear somebody talking, some lecture in oil and gas, none of them even reads the legislation.
You know, the ignorance that you speak of is on many sides. It's not just on the government
You sound like
side.
Trump there. You
No,
sound
on
like
a-
Trump.
on a serious
Trump
note,
said
when you-
there's violence on
both
many
sides.
sides.
When you sit with groups in this country that are supposed to be familiar with these things, they don't know.
But they are paid to know. Those guys who went to the States, they should have said, look, why didn't they say, come, let's go through the legislation?
No, I agree with you. I hear this is one point I agree with you with, and I keep telling people that, look, people might be of the view that Guyana might not have been a very nice place over the years, in terms of economics and infrastructure. But
Doesn't
I
matter
keep
when
telling
you have
people
oil.
this. That is it. If you think that Guyana is not a pretty nice place now, the potential for this country to go further downhill it increases tenfold with these kinds of revenue.
We've just heard that from this talk we came from in the Pegasus.
Exactly, and you
Dr.
heard it there.
Hussain, yeah?
You heard it there.
Yeah.
I had my own issues with the talk because the person, Mr. Hussain, I believe
Hussain,
it is.
Professor, doctor.
He seemed to place much emphasis and responsibility at the doorstep of the operator. I hold a slightly different view, and let me explain why. The operator, whichever company it is a business, and they're here to conduct a business. And when they hand over, whether it's oil or the revenue from that oil which belongs to Guyana, which then translates to oil revenue that we get as a country, to the government of the day has the responsibility to spend that money. I don't know if any company can tell any government in any
How to
part of
spend
the
the
world how
money.
to spend the money. And I don't think that I think what we're doing here is missing the boat. In many of the reports that you continuously see, I think that some of the focus needs to be shifted to the government. Any
Well-
government.
Well, for the first, but as when you asked me the question, I said the deficiencies we have no policy yet, none.
No, we have no policy or no vision. I found
We have
development plans for
legisla-
Kuwait, for
Yeah,
Iran,
yeah.
Libya, these war-torn countries. They have development plans for oil revenue.
You know, Chris, and we bring all these half-baked experts from all
Everyone
over the
is
place.
an expert these days.
You go on the internet and you get some excellent studies.
Yes, all the information you need is there.
Excellent studies. If you want to see proper petroleum contracts, there's a website, resourcecontracts.com. Now, so this government does not even realize it has to formulate a policy. Bringing in people from all over the place, carpetbaggers, used car salesmen,
Snake oil salesman. they call
snake
it.
oil. That's not going to help us. Is it that we are gullible? Is that what you think we are? We gullible? We don't even know what we have to do to get it right.
I don't accept that we are gullible.
So what?
I
We don't know how to get it right?
I think that, and I've seen this in the last government, and I'm seeing it in the current government. And I'll be very frank with you. There is a tendency for people when they get into office and they acquire that power and authority to remove themselves from reality, and they reside in a bubble in which they know it all. They think that their views are always correct, and there is no need necessarily to find out and to see what is going on. I've had officials in the last government say to me that because people had cell phones, Guyana was doing well. And in many different ways, shapes, and forms, you can hear similar kinds of statements being made that is completely disconnected from what is going on the street. And what surprises me, and I tell all my friends in the government this, is that some officials in this government they have gone into this bubble relatively quickly, 2 years. Not 23, not 28, 2. And that is problematic. And there's a real issue with the preparedness of the country for the oil and gas sector.
Well, look, Kaiser News has been doing a job, a commendable job, because they're bringing things to people's attention. When the government refuses and starts making excuses about releasing the contract, when the government refuses to tell people, 5 cabinet ministers are going to visit ExxonMobil, when it doesn't tell us who paid for that trip, isn't it time Guyanese really get suspicious? Don't you get suspicious?
Of course, here, our job as citizens is to always be questioning the government of the day. As you just heard at this lecture, civil society probably plays the most important role.
How? But you know, as Dr. Hussain was speaking there, I kept thinking, how can civil society do its work when you don't have the contracts available?
Well, let's talk about the contract. There is a 1999 contract that was signed by Janet Jagan.
That's right.
This was for prospecting.
Yes.
I am told that the current contract...
Let me explain. No. Let me explain it to you. You have a petroleum agreement. That's what is signed. A petroleum agreement is signed. A petroleum agreement, now under the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act, that's whatever, Chapter 65 or 4. The way it works is this. So you sign an agreement. With an agreement, you then, now that itself should be a transparent process. I think because we didn't know we had oil, we almost gave away all these blocks. The way it works, Chris, you have a big map, and you divide these maps into blocks. And that's why you needed that chief inspector. He's the person who's responsible for that. And the public is supposed to be able to see each block and who has been granted that block. It has.
But that information is available.
Well, where is it?
It's all over the internet. You don't even have to go into GGMC. I can pull up images right now that shows you.
No. I'm telling you, each unit of a block with a number and a letter. Now, you're granted. So on the disagreement, you can apply for a prospecting license. So what you read on the internet are two things. You read the petroleum agreement and you read the prospecting license.
This is the 1999
1999, yes. Both of them are 99
Both,
documents.
okay.
Now, the prospecting license, remember one is an agreement, one is a license. The prospecting license, and I'm probably going to do a chart at some point. The prospecting license allows you a 4-year shot. So you apply for these blocks. You have 4 years in which to carry out your prospecting work. Now, in applying for that license, you have to say, look, what am I going to do with it? Here are the resources here is my work plan. Here are my financial resources. Here is my plan for the use of local content. Not till you wait until you find out.
No, I've been telling people this. The issue of local content now.
They're right in it. They're right in the license.
Since the days of exploration.
Since the prospecting license. Now, after you've got, so you carry out your prospecting. Let's say you don't complete your work, or you're not satisfied. Money doesn't flow that easily. You have 4 years. You go back to the government. To the GGMC, or the chief inspector, but we don't have one.
So it's right now the Petroleum Division at GGMC.
GMC, that's correct. You go back to them, and you say, look, I want an extension. The law allows an extension of 3 years. You have to justify. What the hell have you been doing these past 4 years? You had a work plan. Did you work your plan? Did you provide the resources that you said you would do? Not only that, you have to give up half of the number of blocks that you had. So that's 7 years. Let me finish.
Is it that you have to give up half the number of blocks?
The law requires you to.
Or you are at the place where you're reapplying now?
Sir, the law requires you to give it up.
Automatically?
Yes.
And then you can reapply?
No. Look, if you get 4 years to work this block and you do it, why reapply? Give somebody
force majeure.
No. If force majeure, maybe. But normally you haven't worked it. So then you come back a second time. And that's the final time. You get another 3 years. You got to give up another half.
So you're implying that that has not been followed?
What do you think? You're the man with the publishing this.
I have no information before me that suggests that in the prospecting process that there is or was some sinister
we're not talking sinister.
Shady activity.
No, we're not talking about shady.
Keeping to the rule or
that
law
doesn't
activity.
make it shady. It simply is not complying. That has not happened.
But look, is this
now,
only in petroleum prospecting?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't.
It's a case in which systems were not adhered to, regulations were not enforced.
No. The relevance of it is this. Don't try to make excuses.
I'm trying to put it in the context.
Chris, earlier you really impressed me when you said, my friends in the government.
I have friends on all sides. And that is why I'm able to say that they're disappointing.
They return your telephone
calls.
They're disappointing.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Not anymore. And you would know this. In the lead up to elections, I'm sure you had them all in the program.
Oh yes.
Can you reach them now?
No. So you have up to 10 years. Bear that in mind. 1999 you're talking about, Bardo.
I'm with you, 1999.
Good. Now, let's say you've done everything. You then go to the minute. You think you found oil. You found hydrocarbon, which is the components of petroleum products. you immediately alert the minister. Look, we think we find something. Then you do an assessment.
So this would have
So you do
been
follow
kind
up.
of what CGX would have done
Yes, you do.
after which they
Yeah.
came up
And
dry.
ExxonMobil.
And ExxonMobil
They
would
did
have
the
done
same
that,
kind of
and
thing.
Repsol.
And he says, all right, do some assessment work. And at that point, you either say, because you've been carrying on 4 plus 3 plus 3, maybe 10 years. 10 years is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Say, all right. And then you come back and say, we found oil in commercial quantity. Or the oil we have found, or the hydrocarbon we found, converts to petroleum of commercial quantity, meaning that if I exploit this, the revenue I will generate is greater than the cost of the exploration and exploitation.
Well, there's a
At
little
that
further
point-
explanation to that.
At that point, you apply for a production license.
Mhm.
With the production license now, when you go into a production license, you got to really make sure. Look, your EIA, environmental impact assessment,
Mhm.
your risk management in
Yes,
case
oil
there's a
spill
spill,
response
big
mechanisms and
fire
so
or
on in
anything like that.
place, yeah.
All those things have got to be in place. Plus, we go back to your local content, both of goods, of goods, services, and personnel. All of those things you have to state in your application. Now, if you look at your Petroleum Exploration and Production Act, you'll notice Form A is the application for the prospecting license. Form B is the application
This for actual
for
production.
the production.
Mhm.
Now, that's all it is. So, let's recap. You have a petroleum agreement that governs the entire cycle
Mhm.
from application stage right through to termination, because remember, you when you get a production license lasts in the first instance for 20 years. It's as simple as that. What you need is somebody to read the legislation. Now, when you read it, you realize that this thing has a lot of deficiencies. And you can't think that you're going to pull together a petroleum commission which one minister controls. He appoints the chairman, he appoints everybody else, and if he doesn't appoint them, he becomes the chairman.
And the Petroleum Commission would now become the governing body.
Yes.
Now, you've explained and outlined the process from prospecting to production. The documentation from 1999.
Now, would you...
Right?
Those things are out there, aren't they?
They're out there. So my question is
So
this.
Why have people not been reading these things?
You're asking me?
Yes.
I would
Well,
love
you were
to.
right. You wanted it.
Because
You
people are not
interview-
interested in that.
No, but you...
Reading a prospecting or
Chris-
production license is not sexy. You know what is sexy? Opening
I know what is
newspapers.
sexy.
Opening the newspapers and seeing scandal. People will read that. That is just a fact.
No. I can understand the ordinary person being titillated by those things.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking here about professionals. We're talking about ministers. We're talking about the quintet plus one.
The quintet plus one. But I'm coming to this question. These documentations you've outlined and explained. These are part of what constitutes the 1999 agreement.
No, sir. I am explaining what the law is.
Good.
I
What
just-
Janet Jagan signed.
Was an actual agreement.
An actual agreement. And
Under
we've
the
heard
act, you can sign an
an
agreement.
and she signed an agreement.
Yes.
And we've heard, being reported, and from directly from ministers, that there is no significant difference
There can't be.
besides the 1%
There cannot
that
be.
now has gone
There
to 2%
cannot be. You know
royalty.
why? You know why there cannot be? Because that agreement, remember I told you, it's a single agreement that straddles this entire
Precisely.
relationship.
Precisely.
And there is what is called, I think it's Article 31, a stability article.
Stability article.
Meaning that if a law changes, if the rate of something changes, it does not the government immediately has to renegotiate the agreement so that those people are put back into the original position. They
So it's that stringent that it cannot be changed.
change. That's correct.
So, and that document is out,
That document
signed
is
by
it.
Janet
Yes.
So my question is this: if this document is out, and you're saying that it
When you
can't
say- when you say if
be
this-
changed materially,
when
well,
you
it's
say-
out,
it's out.
it's out, and it can't materially, it can't have, it could not have changed materially.
No.
Then explain to me what is the issue with the contract, that the contract must be released. If the information you're saying is out there and has been out there since 1999, is it a case that there's a confusion as to what the documents are?
Let me tell you this. The legislation is very poor. So whilst you have this model production sharing contract, it does not form part of the law. So a minister can then negotiate whatever he wants.
I'm a bit confused.
Don't be confused.
And here why I'm confused. I'm going back to the document signed by Janet Jagan in 1999.
Which is an agreement and a license
That-
and a prospecting
that
license.
is still enforced.
Well, the prospecting
enforceable.
license has been
Overtaken by the production.
Production license, that's correct.
So that document still has life.
Which one?
That Janet Jagan signed
The
in 1999.
agreement still
The
has
agreement
life.
still has life.
Absolutely.
Good. So the agreement has life. The agreement is public. It's out there.
Well,
Is it?
It's been released by a media house.
And it's out there.
Okay. The government continues to pretend it has some kind of confidentiality clause.
But-
and apparently you fell for that as
No,
well.
hear what I'm not here. Here is what is extremely confusing in this country. You're saying that this document that every single person in this country is asking to be released. You're saying that it's out there.
The agreement is there.
It's out there.
What has not been released is what Mr. Trotman has, as he said, he had renegotiation. But that is a renegotiation over the production license. Now, what I suspect is this. ExxonMobil is now saying, look, Christ, we have got a windfall. What's the big deal of moving from 1% royalty to 2% royalty, where in other countries we pay 20% royalty?
Is it here? If we're sitting down and look, you know, the press conference that the minister had the other day, a lot of what he said came out completely wrong. But sometimes you got to see things for what they are. And what you just said, it constitutes something that when you sit down to bargain, if the two of us were bargaining right now for something, we bargain based on the cards that we hold as the words that he used.
Yeah.
And you know the industry. Prior to 2015, when the discovery was announced, no one knew for sure that there was recoverable resources.
That's correct.
And therefore, the basin was not de-risked.
Mhm.
Investors did not want to come and invest. In fact, I don't know if you know this, there were over 20 companies initially out there in the Stabroek block offshore. And all of them left, with the exception of a handful, to the extent that the operator right now had to go seek other partners and have since ended up with the joint venture agreements with Hess and Nexen. So it was a case in which we didn't know what was out there, and that was what was negotiated. Now, is there something to hide?
Let me tell you
I
one
can't
other-
answer you, but what is perplexing is that you're saying here, and we're agreeing, that this document is there, it's out there.
Yeah.
So if it's out there, why is there a perception that the contents is unknown?
Well, let me tell you, as I said, the production sharing agreement is a model. If you look at all the production sharing contract countries, and you're taking Ghana, you're taking Ethiopia, you're taking I think Burkina Faso, and quite a few countries in Africa have really now.
Yes, Nigeria
Followed,
has
yeah.
a very they've improved on theirs.
under the Act, in fact, only once in Section 51, which is the tax section, does the Act talk of a production sharing contract. Only once. And you're free. Check it yourself. We have opted for production sharing contract. Now, you can say production sharing. What does it mean? 99% and 1%? 90% and 10%? 80% and 20%? 60% and 40%? 50 and 50%? All of those things are matters for negotiation. What you notice on the contract that has been released, that the petroleum agreement that has been released, the profit sharing is 50-50. Many countries, you have 70-30 in favor of the government. You have 65-35. You have 60-40. You have 55.
Yes, there are various
40.
constructs
So
indeed.
we took the simple route, 50-50. Now, so those are some of the things that are in the contract. But the basis of the contract, listen, one production sharing contract in one country is the same as the production sharing contract.
Yes,
in
it's
another
basically the same.
country. Is the numbers you play with.
Right. And
Well, it's going to
and-
be 2% royalty or 1%.
Which brings me to the next question. We know
You're
that
taking
it's
over
50,
the program, but that's how it goes.
we know that it's 50% profit oil, and we know that it's 2% royalty off the top. We know this. This information is out there.
Yeah, but you got to be careful how you measure the two. The 2% is on gross.
2% is on gross. So
Gross.
let's say 100,000 barrels per day is produced, 2,000 barrels.
Yes.
Immediately we receive,
Yeah.
and then the operators have, according to what I've been told from many of the experts in the field, and these days everyone, they're experts. So what I've been told is that off the top, let's say it's 100,000 barrels being produced per day, 2,000 barrels, that constitutes the 2% immediately.
Now, one of the things one has to be careful about, and Mr. Trotman has not been open about this, is that does that 2% go towards cost? Because a royalty is a cost.
Oh, I've asked that question before, but
And what answer you get?
in fact,
Answer you get?
it's not the normal practice.
What answer you get?
Vincent Adams, you were at that lecture at Maury House.
Uh-huh.
And after the lecture, I spoke with him because I had that question too. If the operator would calculate that 2% royalty as part of the expense and take it out back
Mm.
as expense, so they give you with one hand, take out with the
Mhm.
next. But he said that is not normal practice. So
But it's a negotiable thing.
it's a negotiable thing.
And royalty is a cost. No
Well,
question about it.
And
What-
you can
what-
take it back out.
What royalty does, it makes sure you immediately get your 2,000 barrels. That's one of the things it does. Anyway, go on.
Good.
You were
so
asking questions.
2,000 barrels
Mhm.
from the 100,000 constitutes the 2%. What the experts are saying is that of the remaining, the operator has a leverage of 75% maximum revenue being directed towards expense. So what is left from that 2% after it comes out, the operator can go as high as 75% and say this is what constitutes expense. So if we're looking at 100,000 barrels, we receive the initial 2,000, and let's say they go the maximum 75,000. That leaves what?
25. Well, you got. It depends on how that 2% is counted.
We really will be having roughly 14,500 barrels of
yes.
oil,
That's it.
and that is what we really have. Oil.
Let's be clear as well about this maximum, because if the operator has incurred, say, the equivalent of 80,000 barrels, he carries forward a cost of 5,000 barrels.
He carries forward that
Yes,
cost.
so he doesn't lose it.
No, it goes forward.
It
but
goes
at
forward.
no given time,
So you
could he exceed that
you
75?
always have that 25%.
So it comes back out at some point in time.
That's correct.
So, based on the numbers, we seem to understand and know clearly, generally speaking, the oil that will be is going to be coming to Guyana. And people must understand, I think, that it's not cash that we receive, but we receive what is due to us in oil, and then there's an arrangement in which we can have Exxon sell it, and we get the revenue,
all that is in the contract.
or we sell
All
it
that is in the
ourselves.
agreement. All that is in the agreement.
Good. So,
And the oil is valued at the wellhead. You take
at the wellhead.
possession of it at the wellhead.
At the wellhead. So if you're selling your own oil, you have to pay to transport it to wherever you're
Yes.
transporting
So
it to.
now you got to pay whoever, because you ain't gonna take a ship.
Exactly.
So you have to pay a lot of costs.
That is true. That's why, as Oil Now put out a report today, and I'm sure that you've read it, there are plans on the way for a modular refinery to be
Yes,
set up
yes.
here. I see you smiling. So I'm guessing that
You one of the big investors, are you?
I'm not in that category.
Okay.
I'm not in that category.
You're not an oil baron yet.
No. Cooking oil. I dabble in cooking oil.
So, the truth is, Chris, there is no, the government's reluctance, and it's almost a conspiracy with the oil companies not to share information. What is it trying to hide?
Look, I have no clue why the issue of this contract is an issue. I've heard the explanations put forward about the pending court case with Venezuela. The minister said in your program, and you didn't challenge him.
I'm always kind to my guests, you know this?
And, he brought up that clause
I did
was
say it's a
in
matter
the
of opinion,
Petroleum
yes.
Act, in which, he's suggesting that
I
based
said,
on this.
No, but I said it's not a correct interpretation.
And that was his interpretation. So there are
God,
those
man.
reasons being
He's
put
a
forward.
lawyer. He's a lawyer.
Exactly.
No, but it's English. It's written in English.
So outside of those explanations given, and the fact that the document is already out there, I don't have no clue why there is so much apprehension surrounding this contract.
But other countries are now, I mean, as we said, countries are now publicizing their contracts.
And once we sign on to, and it appears as if we are going to become a candidate, EITI, that is one of the requirements. EITI now has gone beyond just simply saying, well, operators show us how much you pay the government show how much you receive, and now they're saying that governments, they would have to publish these documents, and they would have to go beyond publishing these documents. It's clear that they would have to show exactly who are the operators in all of these blocks that you mentioned earlier in the program. What's their name? What's their background? They'll have to show if there anyone in the government that is connected to them.
Sir. These things have got to be published. When a license is issued, it's got to be published.
No, that's what I'm saying.
The application
The
application has got to be published. And this is why I'm saying this government is in conspiracy with
Well,
the oil
you see,
companies.
that is certainly the impression that the government has presented, and the government can only take blame for that. I'm not a representative of the government. If I was working with the government in the area of PR, they would have been doing a lot better, and that is not to ring my own bell. But a lot of the misinformation that is out there could be cleared up very easily.
Well, make them release the contract then.
That is not my role.
No, but
that is not my
if you
role
got this influence.
to make them. I can't. I have no
No,
influence
but
in that regard.
But now, Chris, when you take the government's incomprehensible stubbornness to make this agreement public, when you take this trip to Texas unannounced, we don't know who financed it. When you take the situation where now, instead of ExxonMobil making statements to the public, you have ministers making statements to them and telling you about how much it's going to cost.
What statements are those?
Well, you saw the other day, this is one of the deepest places we can be drilling, and it's going to cost so much money. Now, don't smile, man.
I'll tell you this.
Now,
I
what
think
the government should be saying and what ExxonMobil should be saying is, look, this is the benchmark cost we think is going to be incurred. So that our Minister of Finance, in speaking to ExxonMobil, instead of going into all this big fantastic depths, say, look, what's likely to be cost of your cost of production? Because I need to put that in my budget.
But
That
I
is
would
what-
suspect
hold on.
that that information is known. I would
Where
be
is it?
very concerned
I checked
if,
for
as of
oil
now,
over it. I
I
checked
would-
oil over it.
I would known to the government. I would be concerned if, as of now, with this recent trip, that these kinds of information is now being sought. I would be very concerned, and I'm sure that you would too. On the
Well-
trip itself, I think the trip, we're blowing it out of proportion.
You are?
Yes, the trip.
You have 5 ministers going and no announcement.
That is here. That
a
they've
secret-
created that. They've created
Oh, that's-
that for themselves. But I don't believe that 5 ministers going to Texas at ExxonMobil's headquarters to be briefed on what is happening in the sector is necessarily something that speaks
Hold
to
on, partner. Hold on. hold
backroom
on.
deal.
Hold on.
I don't know.
It might. No, you don't know. Nor do we.
and
No,
they've created
but here
the
now.
suspicion.
You've got ExxonMobil right in Guyana.
Yes, but this is not their headquarters.
No. We're not talking about their headquarters, chap. All their plans have to be kept in Guyana.
Yeah, but you're speaking about plans.
Yeah.
The ministers were actually privy to the entire process. They were able to see how the oil is sucked out of the rocks. They were able to go through the entire simulation.
Man, tell me something. So wait, what ExxonMobil did for them? You think? You think it took them in a real simulation, or it showed them?
I think based on what the minister said at his press conference, they were shown. They weren't taken to the actual site.
But you've seen that. All of us have seen that. You just got to go on the internet. The point I'm making.
But
the
you
point-
would like
hold
to
on.
know that your policymakers that are tasked with handling your affairs and your revenue are being guided by the internet. This is Trump. You're sounding like Trump.
No.
They should
not
go
at
on
all.
the internet for
No.
information.
I am saying, where else you go on BP. You go on. All those places have. The
I know this,
the
but
point
it's
I'm
not
ma-
the same as
point
going in
No, the
person.
point I'm making is, why must 5 ministers go to them? Why
Because
must
they
come
are
to-
the ones that
Oh,
were
come
tasked
on.
with. I believe that the concern and consternation should be with that. Why such a large team has to be overlooking this? Not why they gone, because that is the team that the president appointed.
Why isn't it done here? How you know the president appointed them?
The minister said that the president put together this ministerial team, and he's calling it the Quartet Plus One.
Oh, quartet, now quintet.
The Quintet Plus One. This is what he said. So
No, the point is this. It
So you
seems
don't
so-
think 5 ministers should be going to?
I don't even think they should go.
But let me explain to you why I have a problem with this. And
Listen,
again, no,
with all that
who
you
went? Who were the
hold-
ministers? The minister of business was part of that team. He is a key, or should be a key person in this emerging industry, right? The minister of finance, obviously, he has to be a key person that should be there. The minister.
So he has to run to them. Come on, listen.
But that is not what I know. I understand that trips are going to be.
You are talking about a sovereign state, partner.
I am, but
You heard what is
But
that-
did you listen
hold
to the
on.
press conference? Did you listen to the
No,
press conference?
No, I don't listen to press
This-
conference.
this-
did
this-
you hear Dr. Hussain this afternoon? You notice what he said? He said, "Don't even take."
Yes, he did. He did. No gifts, no,
hamper.
and that is correct. But what
But what
was
have we
disclosed
done?
is that, look, we are in the process of gathering information and knowledge, and in this process, in some instances, ExxonMobil will do it here, and in some instances, we will go there.
Hold on,
That was what I said.
and come back with the nonsense that you heard
Well,
about
that
the
is
debt.
but you here. That is a different story
No, no, no.
altogether.
No.
What was related based on the trip, I have an issue with. But the fact that the trip occurred, I don't know if that is in itself an issue. Because
no.
I believe, I
You
would
don't
like
think
to
the
know,
secret-
I would like to know, whichever government today, I would like to know that these ministers that we have put in office to look after our affairs are au fait, familiar with, and understand what is going on.
You know what we have to do now?
And I don't think that...
Hold on. You know what we have to do now? We have to understand the agreements that we have signed and to hold whichever contractor or operator
Accountable.
completely accountable in respect of the
But
operation.
you've raised another
Hold on.
issue. You've raised another
Hold
issue.
on,
We
no,
don't
no.
hold people accountable here.
No. Well, then what we gone to Texas for?
This now has nothing to do with any foreign company. We don't hold people accountable here.
No.
Do
But
we?
No. We're talking. This is a serious conversation.
It's a very serious conversation.
Because
And-
what is likely to happen? What is likely to happen is that oil will dominate this economy.
Entirely.
And if we're not careful, we'll have the resource curse, and so we need to be particularly careful. The numbers are important. We've had a mid-year report by the Minister of Finance. He gave nothing about projection. Oh, you hear, oh yes, money started flowing. How much money? We don't know. So, Chris, in terms of the oil that will come out from the well, they are simple devices. They're fairly expensive.
The metering devices.
The metering devices.
Yes.
They can't con you on the number.
Well, they shouldn't if you're vigilant.
Well, you dare. I mean, if they come with 100,000 ton tanker,
Yes, it's straightforward. There shouldn't be any jiggery-pokery, as we put it, in that regard.
So that bit is easy. What we have to do is to make sure we have a policy framework, which I come back to that. I was searching today, has this president articulated a vision for petroleum?
Not that I know of.
Not that I know of. The APNU manifesto, as I said, doesn't have it. The last National Development Strategy doesn't have it. The Low Carbon Development Strategy does not have it. So what they need to be doing is sitting down. If you want a quintet, yes, have a quintet. You want threesome, you want foursome, whatever you want. Have them. But sit down and do the work.
No, I'm with you on that completely.
Sit down and do the
I'm
work.
with you on that completely. Look, there is a lack of vision, or there is a lack of the vision being articulated. So, right? There are two things going on there. Maybe there is a vision, but maybe getting it conveyed to the public is where the problem
You
is.
see, one of the other problems we have, and I was speaking to someone earlier today, I wouldn't call names, Quintet plus 2, we have 7 minutes. And that person, no gender, was expressing extreme concern about the environmental issues and whether we are not rushing the operator, ExxonMobil, so that we can have forest oil in 2020. You know, 2020 is not only about forest oil.
Clearly not.
I think you know that.
Clearly not.
Now, isn't it better that we make sure that these people have a very good environmental assessment done so that we know the flora, fauna, the biodiversity, the communities and everything? Even without a spill, there are impacts
Yes, to the environment.
to the environment. We have to do those things.
I'll answer that question in two parts. I recently had a discussion with the Canadian High Commissioner, and I asked him that exact question. If from the time of discovery in 2015 to 2020, less than 5 years, if that is enough time, he said very clearly that normally there is a lot more time, 10 maybe years or more, in which you have time to prepare. And you raise a very important issue. We're rushing to forest oil in 2020. We know that an election is going to be held in 2020. Whether or not that is the reason, who knows? So yes, if you have more time, obviously you have a lot more opportunity to do things better
But
and
Chris,
different.
there are some things you should not be short cutting on.
I
Environment.
agree with you, but
This we know, as somebody said, and I don't believe in all the conspiracies and theories we hear about. But the person was telling me, you know, from their informed perspective, as they said, a comprehensive EIA was not done. Now, this may be entirely wrong, and I think that is when the government, separately from the operator, must now speak to an informed and critical community and say, look, tell me where you think we went. We haven't made enough plans. Take the Deepwater Horizon. You know, they thought everything was all right. When that captain went to sleep the night, it was, oh God, he had 2 shots of whiskey.
They were actually receiving awards at
Yes,
the time for
yes.
safety on the rig.
So now,
But from
of course,
what
that
I
was
know,
BP, that was not
EIA was
ExxonMobil.
done.
Well, you know, you
it's,
can
it's,
do.
it's published on the
Yeah,
the
but you
EPA's
can
website.
do an EIA or you could do an EIA.
Well, sure, of course, but here what my challenge is, and I'll be very honest with you. I have no difficulty with persons bringing to the fore issues with the government, the opposition, ExxonMobil, Timbuktu Company, whatever the case is. If you're going to say that you're doing something wrong, I think that we need to say it because it's in the best interest of the country. But what happens usually in this country is that there's a lot of finger pointing. Oh, the EIA was not done properly, and oh, they're going to do this and that. But there's seldom facts to back it up. And this didn't start now. This predates 2015.
Well, no, but this is why.
And that's a problem.
That's why I'm saying.
We got to be responsible.
We should. This is why I said an informed, intelligent people, not people who just guessing, who look at what this big mushroom of spill, balls of fire. We're talking about people who know, talk, maybe a sham doctor. And it raises a question. Sham is probably one of the.
Yes, he should have been one of the persons that should have been
surely
part
this
of this
government
process.
should have said, look, we want you to help us look.
But you know, we can't get into a political gap.
No, this is not. No,
possibly,
this is not. This is a
you
national
know why
gap.
some concerns might have prevented that particular individual
But
from
you know,
playing a role.
now, so
Because this is the environment in which we operate on both sides.
now, if we put it this, if we look at it in that context, this government might be pushing the operators. Look, please get oil for us, whatever it takes.
And if that is the case, it's an extremely precarious position that we find ourselves.
Highly
And,
dangerous.
and what is most concerning to me, I know we just have a couple seconds left. It's what is most concerning to me is that there is not enough knowledge out there in the public domain. But beyond knowledge, there isn't a desire. You talk to the average person, most people do not think that this revenue from oil will ever benefit them. And that comes back to the government's inability to articulate a vision that speaks to people.
Well,
And
you said you would do
people
better
take ownership.
You would do a better marketing job
Right?
for
So
them.
if they can't take ownership, they're not going to create any kind of a fuss. And that's the problem.
Let me tell you one other thing, because you're hearing a lot of things about this agreement and what the tax is going to do, how they're going to deal with it, and who has the in the drawer and so on. Do viewers know that there is no corporation tax, there's no property tax, there's no capital gains tax? None of these things is going to be paid by any of these operators? Do they know that? Why
None
are
of
we
those things would be paid.
just check the agreement apart now? That is how the agreement is structured. It says, look, it says, so we talk about the 50-50. When you share your 50-50 now, this is your 50 here, Chris. This is Ram 50 over here. But guess what? Ram is the oil company. And the oil company said to him, by the way, the agreement I got with you is that my 50% or the 50% you get includes the tax I got to pay. Give me a receipt that I paid the tax.
I see where you're going with that.
And guess what? That's called a deemed tax payment. It's not an actual tax payment. And guess what? They go to America now and say, look, you know what? We pay taxes in Guyana. And they get credit in Guyana for taxes they did not pay.
That is where persons like you come in, because this is your area of
Bana,
speciality.
we've been saying that plenty times.
That-
You
that-
never
that-
featured me on
that
oil
is-
now. You see now that
I did, and from Plain Talk. that particular program with the minister.
So you understand where Guyana, why Guyana has to be particularly careful, because it has the PPP government handed a contract to the APNU AFC government that wasn't that favorable to the country, even though, and this is one of the things I want to make as a final point, under the laws of Guyana, petroleum products belong to the state. Even if you find oil in your backyard,
It belongs to the
It
state.
belongs
it's not
to the
yours.
state.
Correct.
so all I think the question then is, how much do we get out of it?
Well, look, my closing remarks.
Were you aware of that
I,
tax
yeah,
issue?
No, I'm not aware of that tax issue, and so we'll definitely talk a bit more about that I freely admit when I'm not knowledgeable on something and I don't have a clue about that.
And you
aspect of
accept
it.
now that there's a one single agreement with two licenses.
No, I've not accepted. I've wanted to know if the agreement is out there. What is the fuss about?
No, but
making
you've
it
seen the
public?
agreement.
I've seen the 1999 document.
And the agreement allows for a prospecting
precisely
and a production.
Precisely, so it's there.
So they don't have to sign
It's there.
another agreement, you know.
It's there. It's there.
And the thing is, where Trotman went wrong, when he renegotiated, he should have said, did you honor all the commitments that you were expected to honor? Because remember, an agreement is a contract.
So if they did not, you have grounds to
To
wheel and come again, as
yes,
the DJs
yes,
say.
yes.
All right, so I just hope that going forward, that every individual out there looking at this program, anywhere else in the country, takes ownership of this oil, of this gas, of this resource. This
Well,
is
I-
ours. This
I-
is yours.
I would think that Oil Now, for example, has got to be not only to give the government side and the government statements, but to start looking more
But
critically.
I don't think we only give the government sides and government
Well,
statements.
maybe I haven't seen all
think
your
that we don't dabble in sensationalism, and if
Well, I
not
hope you don't think this is
dabbling in
sensational.
if in not dabbling in sensationalism, you come across as skewed to some side. Well, we're skewed to facts.
Good, I'm glad.
You know. So
All right.
thank you for
Mr.
having me.
Mr. Chris Chapwanya, I don't know if very shortly I'll be seeing you on the parking meter contract again, but thank you.
I've taken a break from that. My colleagues are vigorously fighting that cause.
They're doing constitutional reform now. Operators and viewers, thank you, good night, and see you next week.